Welcome back to your 2020 Construction Cloud training. We're going to be looking at vendor invoices. A couple ways to get in there. I'm going to start straight off by going into accounting. I have a payables menu. I click on vendor invoices. It shows me that I have invoices here already. I have 3 of them. By default, this is grouped by partner and project, and it's also filtered out those that are not canceled, meaning those that have a status of draft, open, or paid, showing me those vendor invoices. If I click on this one, we're seeing it's grouped by vendor. Enox Framing is my vendor. Underneath there, it's grouped by project. So partner, then project. Partner is my vendor. So one of these is to this project. The other one is undefined, not to a project. Let's create a new invoice. Let's select the vendor. I want to choose Barron Concrete here. When I set up Barron Concrete as a contact, I put a default expense account. Let's take a quick look. I have their default expense account listed as subcontractors. Okay, let's save that. What's the invoice number? Type this exactly as it appears on the invoice from the vendor. It can be numbers, letters, dashes, spaces, whatever you need it to be. Invoice date, use your calendar. The due date and the accounting date. If I had payment terms set up, when I select the payment terms, you'll see the due date corresponds to the payment terms. The invoice date is the first, the due date is 30 days later. The accounting date follows the invoice date. If I'd like to apply this invoice directly to one project, I can choose that project here. If I do that, this invoice will appear in the Smart Button listing for the vendor invoices within that project. I want to start entering some details. I'll add an item. When I do that, the default expense account for this vendor appears automatically in the account column. If I choose an item off my product list, and I'll say I have a 60-pound bag of concrete here somewhere, that product has a default account, and that overrides the account for the vendor. I can also override it manually if I wanted to make it something else. As I click somewhere else on the line, you see that the columns auto-fit for the size of the detail. Going back a couple of fields here, the description. This pre-fills from the name of the item I've selected, but I can change this. Maybe I just wanted to say bag concrete. Now, if I put a project here, I can then select an analytic account. That's my cost code. And these show me the cost codes available for this project selected. Had I a project in this section, the project name would have auto-filled here as well. Moving across, I can change my account. I can adjust my quantity as necessary. Right now we show 3 decimal places. That is adjustable. I'll say we need 15 of those. It gave me a price of $8.88. I also had that set up as my default cost on that product. Are we holding retention on this invoice? We'll say no. And I can move through the other lines. Let's create another line, but maybe there's not a product in my list of products in 2020 that I want to buy. Maybe it's just a trowel that I need as a tool. And maybe it's for a project, maybe it's not. I'll say it's not, it's just a tool. And what account do I want that to go to? I just want one of those. I don't have a default price, but I've looked that up, or I've called them. And that's $20 for the trowel I'm looking for. Taxes and accrued taxes. If I want to apply tax to any one of these items, I can choose from my list of taxes. I have one set up right now, my state sales and use tax. I'm not accruing taxes at this point. That's an advanced topic for another video. But as I continue to tab through this line, it does apply the tax to that one line. On that $20, there's $1.45 tax. The details of all the taxes will be listed on the left here, and if I wanted to, I could modify this number. Maybe there's a penny difference between what the vendor calculates and what I've calculated. Either way, you may continue to add items, or when finished, you can save. Since I've started it and saved it, the status has remained in draft. Before I approve, I want to look at some other things. Other information. My journal, by default, I have a payables journal automatically attached to my vendor invoice. It tells me I'm the responsible party. It knows that I set it up. And the account, the credit account here for my accounts payable, that's going to offset the debits shown on these lines. Continuing with the workflow, perhaps I'm just entering it and I need somebody else in my company to approve it. I can edit this and I can mark this checkbox for approval required. As soon as I do that, it opens another field and shows me the people available to approve this invoice. If I choose Randolph and then save this, my options change to send for approval. If I do that, Randolph will get an email In that email, Randolph will have a link where he can respond to the email. If approved, the status will change to approved. From that point, I'll go back in and validate the invoice, posting it and changing the status to open. Let's look back at our list of invoices. Now we have 2 for Barron Concrete and 2 for Enox Framing. I'll remove my groupings so you can see them a bit more plainly. I want to sort them maybe by vendor name here. I'll just click on the vendor column. Way off to the right, it shows me the status. Draft are showing in blue. Pending, open, and paid will be showing in black. Draft telling me I have more work to do. Let's take this that's in draft status now and click Approve and Validate. That posts the invoice. The status is now open. If I go to the Other Info tab now, I have a journal entry record. Clicking that will show me my debits and credits for the proper journal entry. Let's go back to our list of vendor invoices by using our breadcrumb. Perhaps you get a credit invoice from a vendor. Click this button instead, Create Vendor Credit. It says Vendor Credit here at the top. Otherwise, you'll handle this almost exactly like a regular invoice. You're going to enter it with positive numbers. It knows it's a credit. You do not need to enter negative information. Let's give it an invoice number of credit. Invoice date. I'll just give it a description of credit. You could put the actual product in. It's showing me my account here, my accounts payable. We're going to want a proper expense account. So the credit will be going back to that account. And I'll just make it for $10 and move through one line will be fine. Save that. You can send this for approval also. In my Other Info tab, we see the General Ledger account for the debit in this case. The credit is going here. You can approve this when ready. Now, let's look at things from the project side. Let's pick a project. We see we have one AP invoice already related, but we have a few purchase orders. Let's look at these purchase orders. A couple are fully executed, but none say invoices have been received or paid. Since this is fully executed, we have the opportunity to create invoices using this Smart button. Create. It's going to fill in with the information from that purchase order. It doesn't have an invoice number, doesn't have a date, and you'll see the top section's following the same rules as a regular invoice. What's different is on the right, it already lists the project and it lists the commitment, whether it's a purchase order or a subcontract. And in the invoice detail lines, it shows me the information not yet billed on this purchase order. I can take a line and I can say maybe it's only 4 of those instead of 8. I'll need to make sure I have a GL account here. When I get to the next line, I have the option of leaving it as is, or deleting the line, or making other changes. I can add other line items to here. They will not be part of the purchase order though. Let's not forget my account here. When finished, you may save it, send for approval, whatever the proper workflow is for you. Going back to the project, you'll see now I have a second AP invoice related to this project. Thank you for watching, and please be reminded that after logging into your 2020 system, 1. If in a multi-company environment, always be sure you are working within the correct company's data. 2. Not all users have access to the same features and options. And 3. Your typical workflow may vary from what has been presented. Let us know what else you'd like to see in these tutorials, and as always, enjoy the day.